Tips from Trestle, the Senior Living Food and Hospitality podcast, is brought to you by E-Menu Choice Point of Sale and Clark Pro. Welcome to Tips from Trestle, the Senior Living Food and Hospitality podcast. This podcast explores the senior living industry with a unique focus on food, hospitality, and the community experience. I'm your host, Erin Fish. My goal for this podcast: educate, inform, and inspire leaders in senior living. How? By bringing the resident and customer experience to the front of mind in our industry. We should bring the passionate spirit of food and hospitality to everything that we do and everyone we serve each and every day. So what are we waiting for? Let's get to it. Today on Tips from Trestle, I'm joined by Erin Perkins. Erin is the Director of Dining Arts at Arbor Acres. So, Erin, thanks for joining me today on Tips from Trestle. We are obviously at the Senior Dining Conference. So, the first question I've asked everybody who's done one of these sit down here is, tell us a little bit about your conference experience so far.
Very good so far. I actually got to speak and be on a panel, which was really exciting.
Yeah.
Just now getting into the vendors. So I haven't really gotten a chance to meet with everyone yet, but I'm really excited about talking to a couple of different companies. I think that I heard there was a company here that does some kind of like labeling and tracking of the green boxes.
Oh,
things
that's
like that.
cool.
So I'm
Yeah.
excited to talk to them. It's also just a great way to network and meet people. And we have so much to share and they have so much to share. And it's been great.
Yeah, I love connecting at these conferences, especially this one, because we're all doing the same thing. It's not like going to, like a state conference where it's everybody in all the different disciplines. So there's a lot of both commiserating and like celebrating each other here. And so tell our listeners a little bit about Arbor Acres. Kind of give us a background on where you're at and why you call it dining arts versus dining services.
North Carolina.
Yep.
We have a little over 400 residents. We're a continuing care community, and I've been there about 12 years.
Okay.
Our previous CEO actually was very an artistic person, and he it must have been about 7 years ago, came up with an idea to relabel everybody's title as more of an artist. So we consider ourselves art. So you could be a utility artist, which is a or our HR department is talent art.
Okay.
Our fundraising department is philanthropic arts. So it's a fun, kind of makes everybody feel valued.
Yeah.
And that's what they're doing with that.
Yeah. And it's definitely a lot better than my worst word in the world, dietary.
I hate.
Yeah. It's such a gross word. Like I can't even. So, well, the reason I drug you onto the podcast was I am fascinated. We were on a panel talking about sustainability together, but you did a whole breakout session already about, it was called Revolutionizing Waste Reduction with Reusable Takeout Container. And so there's been a lot of talk about sustainability, but like you have this takeout container situation. At least it feels like to me, somewhat figured out, and you guys do a really great job with it. And so I'd love for you to kind of tell us a little bit about how that's got started, what was the driver behind that, and how the program got kicked off.
So I'm sure like everyone else, you're noticing residents more and more interested in being environmentally friendly.
Yeah.
During COVID, the amount of takeouts that we were doing and the amount of trash and boxes that was making up was ridiculous. And it really brought the attention to the problem. And the residents really wanted to do recycling.
Yeah.
In fact, kind of trying to figure out, and I had no idea how complicated recycling was. And unless we, unless we hired someone who was basically going to go in and wash out every container and dumpster dive and make sure we didn't put the wrong things in our bags, we really weren't going to have anything successful recycling. So this was kind of a way to circumvent that.
Yeah.
If you take away the problems.
Right.
The reason that we started it and how we got there. We've started the boxes last September, so a little over a year.
Yeah.
And I think this last year we saved $42,000.
$42,000.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, the amount of money that when you look at your budget, $100,000 a year, paper,
Yeah.
box, you're going to throw in the trash can. It's unreal. So the fact that we're now not spending that and we're saving the money is
Yeah, no, and that was one of the questions I was going to ask you, right? Like, obviously, the environmental factors, and that's pretty easy, but the financial piece, right? Like, I assume that with that saving, there was probably some additional cost. And so, kind of talk to us a little bit about what that looks like, the kind of financial hurdles that you have to overcome to be able to implement a program like takeaway containers.
So our initial investment was about $15,000, and that seemed to set us up pretty well. I went through and basically how many boxes were we purchasing every single week, and I wanted to have a good week to 10 days worth of these green boxes on hand to kind of to balance it out.
Yeah.
A couple of the items we didn't realize that we were going to have to purchase was how are we going to dry these boxes? If you've ever washed Tupperware in your kitchen, you know that it doesn't come out dry ever. So we had to purchase actually a special drying rack just for the boxes. We weren't expecting that. One of the questions I was asked yesterday in the breakout session was, what kind of impact did this put on labor?
Oh, great question.
And I thought that was a great question too. And, at one point we were washing plates. So, not to, say that somebody's not doing something, but, a couple of years ago before COVID, these were all plates. And one of the things we realized with the boxes is you really need to wash the boxes alone, like not with anything else, because, what we do is we dump the water in the dish machine. So it's like fresh water, all the boxes go by themselves. And we do that between 2 and 4 when we're closed and there's not as much other stuff going on. So it really doesn't cost any additional labor. It's more work for the utility artists.
Right.
But, we tried to acknowledge that. We thanked them. In town halls when we were speaking about this program, we think none of this would be possible without them. Then we actually asked our CEO if he could have lunch with them. So all our utility artists had lunch in our formal dining room with the CEO.
Very cool.
Like none of this would be possible without them. So.
Yeah. One thing I'm curious about is obviously this wasn't just a kind of spur of the moment, shoot from the hip. Hey, let's do this. Let's run some quick numbers and make it go. So I'd love for you to kind of walk the listeners through like the high level, like kind of some of the steps that you guys took to determine, hey, this makes sense for us. Let's roll it out. I know you kind of talked a little bit about the financial piece, but clearly getting residents engaged, getting staff engaged, there's probably a lot that went into that. And so I'd love for you to walk us through that.
The resident engagement was the biggest piece. So we went to our dining committee and we really just were honest about what was going on, the real numbers. Did you guys even realize we spent $100,000 a year on throwaway boxes? And we immediately had their support. I also spoke to kind of right off the bat our CFO, and I've been there about 12 years now, and I didn't have to do too much explaining, which was really nice.
Yeah.
Thought it made sense. But once we had the resident buy-in, the dining committee could spread like wildfire because everyone was so interested in the idea of being more sustainable and not having that trash. So we did a couple of town hall meetings where I discussed it. We also put a really cute little video together that basically walked everyone through the whole process. What the boxes look like, where they can turn them back in. How is it going to look when you walk through, the serving line and they're putting the food in the box? So we were able to do that video and post it on our community website, and residents could watch that, see how the process worked. What else did we do? Obviously, we put notice the staff, bail boxes, all of that.
One of the things you mentioned about residents, the whole thing spreading as fast as it did, right? Do you find that if you were to try this like 10 years ago, a couple years into your time, the resident mindset around this has shifted? And was it just the money piece where you're like, hey, it's $100,000 and that's something you're paying for? Or was there a good combination of the financial impact plus this desire to leave the world a better place kind of mindset?
Technology continues to drive changes in senior care, and that includes food service. eMenu Choice is an award-winning point-of-service application for managing the dining function in senior living communities. This mobile, touchscreen-enabled software enhances the dining experience for residents while streamlining processes for staff. The flexibility and functionality of eMenu Choice makes it an effective solution for any type of senior living environment, from independent and assisted living to skilled nursing facilities. It works for production kitchens or restaurant-style service with options for per meal or a la carte pricing, and accommodates a variety of payments, including bill to account, meal credits, and credit cards. Created by a senior care provider with more than a century of experience serving older adults, eMenu Choice eliminates communication barriers between staff and residents while enabling person-centered choices and greater resident satisfaction. eMenu Choice, transforming dining for senior living.
A little bit of both. I felt like I was almost backed up into a corner about the whole situation. They were not going to accept that we weren't going to do something different about our takeout.
Okay.
And like I said, recycling just seemed like a piece I wasn't going to be able to tackle. And this just stopped everything.
Oh, wow. So one thing, so I remember early on in my career, this was a conversation because I was at a large CCRC. And so we had, a resident committee had this idea of, hey, let's bring our own boxes. And we ran into some hurdles with that with the local health department saying, well, no, because you can't control how they're clean. And what are you going to do about food safety? Was that kind of some of the driving force behind this reusable containers that you purchased, that you manage? Or was it simply more of a, hey, this just makes sense cost-wise, we can do it this way?
Glad you brought that up, because actually that was something that our residents were asking, can I just bring my own box?
Right.
And the health department, like you said absolutely not. So we actually, for a small period of time, had a table that the resident could take their food from the plate and put in their own box. And it was kind of like a station.
Really?
Yes.
Wow. Because it technically wasn't part of your dining room or part of your food service operation. So it was they're doing their thing. Wow. I can't imagine what that would have been like. So I can see why this makes a lot more sense. So when you think about your program, beyond kind of those benefits of the environment and the bottom line, how do you think this contributes to your community's value, to the perception to the public? What have you seen and experienced from that perspective?
It brings a tremendous amount of value to the community. One of the gals on the panel today, she said they want the world to be a better place now than they left it,
right,
or leave it a better place than they came. And like you said, 10 years, I don't feel like that was the mentality. It's just everything shifted and changed.
Yeah, I think you're right. And for me, I think about, kind of being that third party saying, well, I could see if I were your marketing director, all of the opportunities that yeah, well, we're sustainable and we have this great program and it doesn't impact your food service, but you're able to enjoy it. And it's, leaving that mark. And so it's a really cool program that you got going. And so
Senior dining. I mean, we probably do 200, 250 takeouts a day. That's big. And I think, we can make, if we put some pressures out there on some sustainable items, we can make an impact.
Definitely. So if you were going to talk to another operator, they're thinking, man, that sounds like a really great program, but we're not a 400 person CCRC. We have clients that I work with, we have 5 communities and our average density count is 80 residents, right? So how would you tell somebody like that, hey, this is a program you can implement, there's opportunity here for you. And this isn't just a program for a big campus like yours.
Hopefully it would be easier with less residents. You could just tailor the boxes to be however many you want to order. What we did is we physically replaced all of our takeout boxes with the greenie boxes. So anything, whether it's food left over after the meal or I called down an order, all of that is going into the box. So it's really just changing your product.
Yeah.
I think it's just yeah.
No, that sounds great. So no styrofoam, no nothing. It all is in the greenie boxes.
Yes and no.
Yes and no. Okay.
At Easter. Each day at Arbor Acres. And obviously there's a lot of guests. So anytime, when we have our lineup with our staff and it's a big holiday, just remember, the grandson, he doesn't get one of those boxes.
Right.
He gets the disposable boxes. So we keep them on him for things like that. Also staff, we do a free employee meal and we do use a disposable. We went from using the nice black bottom, clear top kind of box to more of like the large French fry type boat to kind of be a little bit more eco-friendly. But unfortunately, we're just not in a position yet to send them home with staff. And that's our hesitation.
Yeah. Well, and it makes me, I think it brings up a good point about, there's a cost associated with those. I think I remember you saying it's like $8 or $10 a box. And so it's an investment. And so what happens when you've got to replace that? Like, how do you manage all of that? And so it sounds like you guys have been very strategic and, we feel like residents are going to own those. So we don't have to worry quite as much about that cost. I mean, there's definitely some there, but at other touch points, it just doesn't quite make sense yet. And so, I asked you this on the panel about this as a revenue opportunity. Do you ever see that being something that you would do with this or that you could see an operator wanting to do? Or is there more like benefit as a program, as a kind of goodwill kind of thing, as opposed to, hey, I may charge an extra $1 for you to use this box?
I think it would be difficult for us to go that direction now.
Okay.
I think if you started that way and there was some type of leak out charge or something like that, the box helped pay for the box or brought in some revenue, I think you could probably do that. I think if I tried to implement a fee at this.
Right. Yeah. We know how that goes, right? Like once you give it to them for free, that's kind of the end game. So, well, Erin, as we wrap up here, we've touched so many different things about this program, but for you, what's the one big takeaway? Like if you were we had a row of operators standing in front of us and they were wanting you to tell them, this is the reason you should do this. This is the one, why? What would that be? What would you share with them?
Why not?
No, that's great. That's perfect. Exactly. Why not do that?
Need the residents to buy it. If they don't want it, it will not.
Right.
Because so much of what you're counting on them to do is bring the boxes back and, participate in this program. That would be a piece of advice though. If they're not the driving force, it's going to be very challenging to make this successful.
Yeah, no, great advice. So, well, I wish you all the success with this. I'm going to, stay in touch. I want to keep learning more about this because I definitely see a lot of opportunity with a program like this. And so thank you for sharing your experience with everybody here at the conference. Thanks for coming on to the podcast and thanks for joining me today on Tips from Trestle. So there it is, everybody. Another one in the books. Thanks again for tuning in. Please follow, like, and subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts. And be sure to follow us on social media at Tips from Trestle. You can also learn more about the work I do by following me on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, and even TikTok. And be sure to check out Trestle Hospitality Concepts at www.trestle. I'm your host, Aaron Fish, and this has been another episode of Tips from Trestle.